Continuous control monitoring is becoming a bigger part of the GRC conversation because the environment around controls has changed. Organizations are managing more systems, vendors, cloud environments, regulatory expectations, and internal change than before. The old model of checking controls at fixed points in the year still has a place, but it leaves a gap. A control can look fine during a review and still drift a few weeks later. At a high level, CCM is the practice of using data, system signals, workflows, and recurring checks to understand whether important controls are still operating as expected. It does not mean every control is monitored every second. It means the organization has a more consistent way to see control health between formal reviews, audits, and assessments. That matters because controls only create value when they reflect what is really happening. Let me try to illustrate with a few practical examples. A policy may say privileged access is reviewed quarterly. A framework may require vendor risk reviews, or a procedure may state that critical vulnerabilities are remediated within a defined timeframe. But in all these cases, the real question is whether those expectations are still being met as things change. This is where risk and control mapping matters. A risk tells you what could go wrong. A control tells you what the organization is doing to prevent, detect, or reduce that risk. CCM tells you whether that control is still operating the way the organization expects. When those pieces are connected, monitoring becomes more useful because a failed control is no longer just a failed task. It becomes a signal that a related risk may need attention. This is also where CCM becomes more interesting. It is often described as an automation problem, but I think it is more accurately a control design and operating model problem. Technology helps, but only once the organization knows what it is trying to monitor, which risk that control supports, where the reliable signal lives, and what should happen when something looks wrong. Take access reviews. A quarterly review may still be required and useful. But if an employee changes roles 2 weeks later, or a privileged account is created outside the standard process, the quarterly review alone may not catch the issue quickly enough. CCM asks what signal would show that access changed, became excessive, or moved outside policy. Risk mapping adds the next question. Which risk does that signal affect? The goal is not to monitor everything, that just creates noise. The goal is to identify the controls where more frequent visibility would materially improve risk management. Access, vulnerability, remediation, endpoint coverage, cloud configuration, logging, vendor reassessments, evidence freshness, and exception tracking are common places to start because they are tied to systems and workflows that can produce useful signals. This is also where a platform like Centraleyes can help. CCM becomes much stronger when control signals, evidence, risk, ownership, and remediation live in the same operating environment. Instead of treating monitoring as a separate dashboard, Centraleyes helps connect control performance to the broader GRC program, so teams can see what changed, understand which risk it affects, and move the right work forward.